Good afternoon, everyone. Can y'all hear me? Give me a little thumbs up if you can hear me. Hello, hello. I see a lot of hellos and good afternoons. Oh, yeah, good. Thanks, Curtis.
Yes.
Yes. All right, perfect.
See some yes.
Yes. Well, we are certainly so glad to have you all join us today. This is the Middle Georgia RESA's webinar series on social emotional learning. And we are going to provide you with some helpful tools and strategies that you can use in the home setting to support the social emotional needs of your students and even for yourself. So during the next 4 weeks, we will explore different topics related to social emotional learning. And of course, today's topic is going to be about being proactive, which will give an overview of what social emotional learning is and ways that we can apply it in our everyday lives. But before we get started, let us introduce ourselves to you. I am Dr. Demita James, the GLRS Director at Middle Georgia RESA. And we have Miss Laura Sims.
Hey, everybody.
Laura. There you go. Laura is going to be presenting the next two webinar topics. Laura, you want to tell them which topics are those again? I keep forgetting.
Yeah, we're next week we'll be looking at ways that folks can incorporate some really good strategies to help set some routines and expectations at home within the family and within just in the context of whatever learning might still be occurring, distance learning with schools. We'll talk a little bit about that. I know that that's going to be winding down for some really soon, but we'll talk a little bit about that. And there might be some information that we'll talk about that can carry over through the rest of the summer. And then after that, we're going to talk about de-escalating some challenging situations as we all practice this social distancing and we're at home with our loved ones and experiencing all this good quality time we're all having together.
Awesome. So before we get started, just a little housekeeping. I think y'all have already learned how to use the chat box. Of course, if you have any questions or comments throughout the presentation, please feel free to use the chat box, and Laura will be monitoring that for me. And I'll try to slow down enough so we can kind of answer questions as we get to them. If not, then we'll definitely have a portion of at the end that we can answer questions or do any comments that you may have. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started so that we don't keep you longer than the time that we have allowed for you today. Just a little background. So as an educator, we already know the importance of developing relationships with our students. Before we try to implement anything, we know that relationships is going to have to be a main part of what we do in order for us to be able to connect with people. So the importance of being proactive is planning our day and planning ahead. And we know that things tend to run smoother when we have a better idea of what to expect. We usually have thought about a contingency plan, even if it's only in our mind, of what we will do when situations occur. And we know that those situations always occur. Nothing ever goes as planned. But so we always have to have that plan in mind of what we're going to do in those situations. So why not be proactive in our thoughts about addressing the social emotional needs of students? We often have those contingency plans for our other academic areas, but we don't always think about how we are addressing the emotional needs and the social needs of our students. So the definition of being proactive is making things happen instead of waiting for things to happen to us. In order for us to do that in a social emotional way, we have to begin with understanding how we're feeling. So we're going to talk about some feelings really quickly. I want you to take a moment and assess your feelings right now. For most of us, it's the beginning of the week in the last full month of the school year where we have been working and learning from home for the last 6 weeks. How do you feel? How are you feeling? Are you feeling overwhelmed, nervous, anxious, scared, happy, or maybe even sad? Maybe you're not feeling any of these, but you just can't put your finger on that feeling. Just imagine that if you're feeling this way, your students and your children, your own children, may be feeling this way too. However, their feelings are often demonstrated in their behavior. So what are some things that you often see with children? So I see some people have commented that they are feeling a little overwhelmed. They're feeling some anxiousness. They're tired. I understand, me too. I thought that working from home would probably be a little easier, but I have found that it is probably more taxing because I seem like I work all day, every day, 24/7. So I don't know if y'all are feeling that too. Some people are feeling helpless, overwhelmed, exhausted, uncertain. Yeah, we just really don't know. We're living day to day, trying to figure out what's going to happen with the new school year, how to end the school year. We have some people who have graduates who are not going to have that traditional graduation. So there's a lot of those feelings. So if we're feeling this way, we have to remember that our students and our children are feeling this way as well. Thank y'all so much for providing those comments. All right, so as we delve a little deeper, we're going to talk about the 5 components of social emotional learning. So there are 5 components of social emotional learning: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision making. One of the things that we have to be mindful of is that we cannot teach social emotional learning in the midst of an escalated situation. These strategies and supports are best utilized when we are being proactive. Therefore, we should integrate them into our daily practices in both our home and in our school setting. When we are being proactive in understanding our social emotional needs, we're able to work through those difficult situations in a different way because we have those strategies and tools that can help us. So we're going to go through each one of these 5 components and learn a little bit more about them so that we can figure out how we can implement those in our everyday. So let's start with self-awareness. Self-awareness is addressing our emotions, our self-perception, our self-confidence, our self-efficacy, and recognizing of the recognition of our strengths. So before we can adequately teach kids how to monitor their social and emotional needs, we have to learn how to monitor our own. And this begins with us being self-aware. We have to be able to identify our own emotions and have positive strategies that we use on a daily basis so that we can model those things for our students and our children. As adults, we have to have a healthy internal life and external life. We do this by being aware of our feelings and stopping to reflect on how we're feeling in this moment. So just a few minutes ago, I had you to tell me how you were feeling, and some of you responded to that. So now that you know how you're feeling, we need to worry about and focus on what we can do when we are feeling that way. So when stressful situations arise, how do you manage your stress? So you've told me that you felt uncertain. Some of you have felt tired and overwhelmed. Some of you said you were anxious. So tell me, when you feel this way, what do you do to manage your stress? I'll give you a few seconds to kind of give me some comments on that. All right, Laura says she takes deep breaths. Laura and I have had to practice that strategy as we have been preparing for this presentation. Learning new technology and new ways to present things have brought us a little bit of stress. All right, somebody said mindfulness. All right, walking. Oh, kayaking and hiking. Those are all awesome. Exercising, reading. So yeah, you have to find those things that you can get your mind away from what you're doing in that moment of stress, whether that's walking away. Those are all great things that you can do. And we have to know how to do those ourselves before we can teach our kids. And sometimes we demonstrate that by doing that, with our kids. So the question is, are we giving them, our students and our children, the skills to manage stress? Do we give them the skills that they need to handle conflict? Are they dealing with various emotions and knowing how to deal with them? This includes them learning how to have empathy, show forgiveness, having the ability to talk through difficult situations, and respecting the differences of others. I remember when I was growing up, there was a show or a commercial. I can't quite remember which one it was, but there was a scene where a parent was disciplining their child for something. And the parent was asking the child where they had learned this behavior. And the child responded, "I learned it from watching you." And even after all these years, that stuck with me. Now, the details are a little vague because, I am a little older, so I can't remember as well as I used to, but I do remember having that feeling. But the sentiment still rings true today, is that we are demonstrating and modeling what our children, how we handle situations, and our children are modeling behind us. So they are learning from us. So if we're not able to handle stressful situations, then our kids are not going to be able to handle those either. Now, the details, we often forget that our kids and our students are watching and observing us, and their social emotional development starts with what we show them. So that whole saying, action speaks louder than words, is a prime reminder that we just can't tell them what we want to know, or what we want them to do, or how we expect them to act. We have to model that behavior. But if we're not aware of our own emotional needs, we don't have great resources or strategies that we can show them how to implement. Quickly, let's look at some of the comments that people have said again about some of the strategies. I got quite a few of them as we were going on. Some people said that they prioritize their responsibilities and take breaks, rest, look at TV for entertainment, sometimes trash TV and looking at other reality TV, I should say. Looking at the lives of other people make you feel like your life is not quite so bad. And yes, somebody said children are mini me's, whether they are students in our classroom or children in our home. That's all great. Thank y'all so much for commenting as we go through this. All right, let's look at our next one, self-management. So God, tongue-tied. What you're doing today is an example of having self-management skills. For most of you, no one told you to sign up for this course. You saw the advertisement and determined that you wanted to learn something new or even reinforce something that you already knew. In adults, it is critical that we have a good self-management plan or skills, and we have to set those goals. It's important to set goals to help develop our social and emotional well-being. I'm going to tell y'all about my own stories as I keep on. Recently, I had a friend to text me and ask if I wanted to join a workout challenge. My first response was that this was going to take a lot of time. I don't think I can do the number of miles that are required for this challenge. But then as I kept thinking, I thought that maybe this was just the goal that I needed for myself. The challenge for the month of May was for us to do 100 miles. It was, well, 400 miles. It's a group of four, and we all are contributing to reach 400 miles. In my mind, I saw that as being I needed to do 100 miles. But then I realized that, yes, I don't have to do 100 miles in one day. It is for the month of May. So I can equate that to being about 3 miles a day. And even though I may not do all 100 miles, my counterparts are contributing to the 400-mile goal as well. So I don't feel like I have to do that by myself. So that's part of a self-management, being able to problem solve and clearly communicate and manage your time and strengthen, your memory, and even exercise is part of that self-management. When we have our students to provide those self-management skills, they are able to follow through on plans to complete assignments. They're able to study for tests and stay focused in class. So we want to really teach them how to do that, and it keeps them from having that impulse control, and that level of feeling like they can't accomplish anything. So, when you're talking about self-management, you're talking about stress management, you're talking about having self-discipline, you're talking about goal setting and being self-motivated. Have you ever had a goal and felt accomplished once you reached that goal? I'm going to wait to see how many people share their goals with us. All right, so have you ever had a goal that you set and you were able to complete it and you felt a sense of pride after you had accomplished it? All right, what was that goal? Like, yeah, here's people saying, yeah, but share with us what were some of the goals? Anybody want to share? Oh, okay. I see somebody said that their goal was to finish their dissertation. That is a great goal, and you can do it. Trust me. Um, okay. Congratulations on completing your doctorate. That's awesome too. All right. Mountain biking across Georgia. You trained for 3 months. That's awesome. Great, great, great. Specialist degree. Yeah, so I mean, you have to set those goals. We can't stay stagnant. So that's part of our whole social emotional well-being for our self-management. Good job. All right, so let's move on to the next area, which is social awareness. Social awareness is the idea of being able to look at somebody else's perspective and having empathy, appreciating the diversity that we have as humans, and having respect for others. I like to think of social awareness as being culturally and responsive, culturally aware and responsive. So, I like my little questions. So, have you ever been in a conversation with someone and someone else walks up to you to talk to you? How do you handle that? Do you continue on with your conversation and position your body in a way that you're blocking out the other person? Or do you make eye contact and do like a head nod to let the person know that you acknowledge them? That's kind of how I see being socially aware. We don't just close out people, we are able to acknowledge people, even if we are in the midst of doing something else. Laura and I was talking earlier, and we were kind of having a discussion about what social emotional learning is going to look like for when we go back into large group settings, when some people are really focusing on the safety and health portion because of the COVID-19 situation. And some people are going to be, have a little bit more relaxed attitude about it. And that is going to be where our social awareness kind of comes in, where we are being socially sensitive and understanding that everybody is not in the same place and may not have the same ideas and same perspective that others may have. So we have to kind of be prepared for that and have that social insight and that sense of having a ability to quickly respond and comprehend what's going on in a situation, which is what that social awareness is all about. So when we talk about social awareness, we also talk about social communication, which means that we also have the ability to interact appropriately with others, including problem solving those interactions. So in the midst of a course or a class where you're having to sit in close proximity to someone, it may be that you feel a little unsure about it. So you got to kind of start thinking and problem solving. What would your interaction be? How would you socially communicate that to the people who are around you? When you think about your students, how could you practice this type of skill in the school or home setting? Give me some examples of what you could do in the school or home setting to practice this social awareness concept. All right, so I'm waiting on some chats to come in. When you think of this social awareness, how could you practice this type of skill in your school or either in a home setting? All right, so some have shared that they can do some social stories and modeling. They can demonstrate through role playing. Those are all great things. Those are great things that you can actually do with your students and with your own kids. You can have those conversations of what happens when you're in this situation. Have you had that discussion of what will happen when we go back to an actual school building, So having those conversations and thinking ahead and preparing them with the ways to problem solve is what we want to do when we're building those social awareness skills. All right, let's look at relationship skills. Thank y'all so much for answering that question. All right, so when we talk about relationship skills for students, it refers to the ability to establish and maintain healthy and active relationships, interacting with diverse groups, communicating clearly, actively listening, and being able to cooperate and resist the negative or inappropriate social pressures. In my example earlier, that was my example of the mouse. That was an example of social pressure, but it was a positive pressure. So we want to be able to have those conversations and show students what is the difference between something that is a negative or inappropriate social pressure and what would be an example of something that would be a positive social pressure. I know for many students, the use of social media sometimes skew what good relationship skills may look like. So we have to get them off of the TikTok and the Snapchats and have them to have conversations so that we can understand where they are and be able to provide them with insight as needed. But so I know many of us are also guilty of social media traps too. And I'm not judging because I'm one of them. But it goes back to what we were stating earlier, or what I stated earlier. We can't tell them to stop spending time on their devices if we're doing the same thing. So we have to kind of monitor what our behavior is so that we can be able to show them a different way of doing something. So in the midst of the COVID-19 time, we can shift our behavior by doing activities that will help develop those relationship skills, even if it is through a virtual means. I know for our family, even though we haven't seen our parents and siblings for weeks, we, before the COVID-19, we used to have weekly dinners with our family on Sunday. And so because we are not having those weekly dinners anymore, we are doing weekly Zoom meetings, which has helped us to keep in touch with each other, to be able to communicate and kind of figure out what's going on, to be able to provide help as needed when things have occurred. So it has given us the opportunity to catch up on what's happening with each other. And it just serves as a reminder that we are not alone in this. So this has helped us tremendously as a family for our own social emotional well-being. What kind of things have you done with your family since you have been in this shelter-in-place situation? Share with me some of the things that y'all have done that you may not have been doing prior to being at home so much. All right, so some people probably have spent more time doing movie nights. People said that they do more phone calls and chats. They schedule family game nights and video chats with family, Skype, FaceTime, Zoom, drive-bys. I love those drive-bys. Don't get out of the car, but you sit in the car and talk 6 feet or more distance away. Cooking. All right. Yeah, those are all great things. So I think we have kind of delved into developing some of those relationship skills because we've been forced to, but it really has been a really good thing for us. Oh, wow. Somebody said that they have one day of no electronics. Now, I haven't gotten that brave yet, but I think that is could be an awesome idea. I tend to like to have my audiobooks, and I like to read through Kindle. So I still use my electronics for even my relaxation time. All right, good thing. Thank y'all so much. All right, so our last section, is responsible decision making. In responsible decision making, we try to teach our students how to identify the problem, analyze the situation, solve the problem, and look at any kind of ethical or moral ramifications that may come with that decision, and evaluate and reflect on what we have done. So how do we teach students responsible decision making? We have to teach them how to think twice before they do things. Even young students and kids can be taught, even at an earlier age, that their actions have consequences. Sometimes for our older kids, we have to walk them through the process of thinking about those potential dangers and consequences of their choices, and give them, okay, if this happens, then this is something that could possibly happen. But the reality is that we all make decisions that may not be the best, but learning to reflect on those decisions help us to note any necessary changes and incorporate those changes for the next time we have a big decision that we might need to make. And then we have to just teach our kids that we learn from our mistakes. We don't keep making the same mistakes over and over again, because we need to take that time to evaluate what we have done and reflect on it. And so these are skills that are important for kids to learn for life. It's not just about acceptable behavior in school, but we always want to keep the focus on growing the individual for a lifetime. Now, why do we need to concern ourselves about social emotional needs of students? Social emotional learning can increase academic success, lower stress levels, prevent negative behaviors such as drug use, violence, and bullying. It also equips students with those soft skills, those things that are known as people skills or social skills. It can promote positive relationships with others, and it helps us to learn how we feel about situations, even how we may feel about school, or whatever else we may be dealing with. But it gives us a better view of ourselves because we become more in tune with how we are feeling and how others may be feeling as well. So, as we continue our discussion for the next few weeks, we will be providing you with practical strategies that will help with the implementation of the social emotional supports in the home and in a school setting, because these things are things that we just need for life. But to kind of get started, just thinking ahead, there are 4 approaches to teaching social emotional learning. And the implementation starts with us as the adults having a better understanding of what it is and how we can monitor our own social emotional needs, which is why you are here today. You want to learn more about what social emotional learning is all about. And so now that you have a brief overview of what that looks like, what your next plans or thoughts should be is how you can explicitly teach this to your students. There are some students who have good models of good social emotional behavior, and then there are those who don't. So we have to make sure that we are teaching it explicitly and giving them the opportunity to practice. We have to practice and model those strategies. And then in the school setting, we can integrate it with our academic curriculum. So kind of think about those opportunities that allow for the integration of social emotional learning throughout the day. And in the home, we can integrate those extracurricular activities with some of the regular tasks or chores that we might have for our students to do. And then we always want to make sure that we are creating a climate or culture that is going to allow for these skills to be learned. So as we go through the remaining weeks, we will delve a little deeper into how social emotional learning can be implemented in both the home and school setting. And that is the conclusion of our first session on social emotional learning. We do have a few minutes to look at the questions and the comments in the chat box. And as you found this website, the link for the presentation, I want to remind you that the other supports and resources for the remaining weeks will be found on the tinyurl.com/Middle Georgia RESA SEL May 2020 link. So you can just take that and it'll take you to the link that has the social emotional page that will have resources for you for each one of the sessions as we go through them. And you'll also find the link for the next week on that session. All right, so let's look and see if there's any questions in the chat box that we need to address. All right, I think I just see some comments, which I appreciate. I think a couple people made a good point that yes, we have to kind of monitor our news watching too, because that can definitely impact our social emotional learning and our social emotional well-being. All right, so I think we are good. I hope that you will join us again next week as Laura starts to give you strategies to use both in the home and in the classroom. And we will see y'all then. All right, have a good one. Thank y'all so much.